Trading Nut, episode 86.
So the first 2 years was treacherous for me. I was blowing so many accounts. But after 2 years, I actually understood the psychology. I mastered psychology, sorry. I had a good, solid strategy methodology that I was using, and the risk management I was using as well. So I would say after 2 years is when I was consistently profitable.
The market's going to do something. Your job is not to fight it.
The market never, ever runs away. It's always there.
That personal diary of trading will make you a much better trader than...
I could be right about the direction, but wrong about the trade.
Don't focus on the monetary side.
Trying to make too much money on a trade is what I have seen killed every trader.
Your losses offer you some of the greatest insight you can find into your mistakes.
Relax, learn the process.
Candlestick pattern trading is a freaking trap.
Don't be in a rush to become a millionaire.
Let the market tell you what the market wants to tell you.
This podcast is not financial, trading, or investing advice of any kind. Before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsored partner for today's episode, City Traders Imperium. Now, CTI has one of the world's best funded accounts and learning platforms all in one. Get a CTI Forex funded account today and advance a step closer to achieving your personal freedom. To find out more, head over to citytradersimperium.com. That's citytradersimperium.com. What's up, traders? Welcome to another installment of the Trading Nut podcast. I'm your host, Cam Hawkins. And before we get into the interview today, I just want to touch on the sponsor. So I've got a new sponsor. You would have heard their message just before. Look, it's one of my ex-guests. So Daniel Martin, who was on the show not so long ago. He runs City Traders Imperium. They're sponsoring the podcast. They're on board for a few months. Look, they're my first major sponsor. So please head over there, City Traders Imperium. There's links in the YouTube, on the site, and obviously you're going to hear about them today. Now, please head over there whilst they sponsor and go and check them out. Make sure you let them know you came from Trading Nut as well. All right, guys, so on to the show. Today we have Ali Quazi on the show. Now, he goes by the handle Forexed, Forexed, on Instagram. He's got a fantastic Instagram account over there. It's worthwhile checking out. It's just got so much information there for traders and a whole bunch of other fun stuff and all this sort of thing. Hence why he's got so many Instagram followers as well. Guys, so he's on the show coming up in just a second, and we actually shot a fantastic couple of videos afterwards. So one you're going to see this week. The next one I'm probably going to release in a few weeks' time, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe on the YouTube for that video. It's a doozy. It's a bit like my TradingView replay challenge, which is what I'm doing now, where I'm getting guys to go through a back test in TradingView and seeing how they come out. There's a little link over there on the site. You can go and check out the results of the guys who've been through that. It's happening once a week, so make sure you jump over there on the YouTube channel and check that out. Now, last but not least, before we get into the show, I just want to let you know that I've closed off the Robot Traders Club. So, guys, if you're in that club, head over to the chat, check out what the details are around that. I moved everything over to my Builders Club, so I'm teaching people how to build trading robots, right? So, for example, there's a guy that's just mentioned this week that he's building a robot to help him pass a funded trader program, like what City Traders Imperium offer. So he's built a robot that restricts him to do certain things so that he can't break the rules of the funded trader program and can pass the evaluation and that sort of thing. So there's so many things you can do. This month I've probably got the best offer on ever with the Nick Shawn robot being given away to anyone who joins up the Robot Builders Club. There's a discount code as well where you can get $500 off. Go and check it all out there on tradingnut.com. Folks, that's enough from me. We've got a fantastic interview coming up, and then there's some fantastic videos that follow up this interview. So please, let's hear it for Ali Quazi. Let's go. All right, folks, we've got Ali here on the show. He goes by the handle Forexed on Instagram, and one of my followers said, hey, you got to get this guy on the show. He's doing amazing stuff over there. So I checked out some of his content, and he's right. It is amazing stuff. Some of the great videos he's got up there on YouTube and some nice analysis. So we're going to find out all about how he got into it today and even learn a thing or two. So welcome to the show, Ali.
Thank you for having me, Cam.
Look, it's a pleasure to have you on. Now, to start the show off, I usually get people to talk about how they got into trading. So do you want to give us your sort of full story, background of your life, how you got into trading, and I'll ask a few questions along the way.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I've been trading for more or less around 5 years now. And obviously I started with just like any other person would start, just, making money and, chasing that financial freedom. And I actually went to college for the first year for computer science, and afterwards, after a few semesters, I didn't think it was for me, so I had to drop out of that. And I took trading full time, and I really saw some progress in trading, especially when I started my Forexed page. I saw a lot of followers, liking my content, and I thought, maybe I was doing something right with my trading. So I just continued to pursue it, and after a few years, approximately 2 years, I actually gained that profitability and that consistency for me to be able to live off of trading, basically. Yeah.
And so how did you stumble into it? What made you interested, and how old were you when you did it?
Well, I would say so. I just graduated high school, and maybe the last year of high school, I kind of understood what Forex was, but I didn't really, delve into it. Kind of like how a lot of people know what the stock market is, but they don't really know the details of it. Same thing for me. But essentially, I just wanted to, gain that financial freedom. I didn't really want to work. The 9 to 5 is definitely not something that I was really interested in, because my family, they work 9 to 5, and I see sometimes they come home from work and they're stressed out. They're just completely drained out of energy, and I just couldn't see myself living like that. And looking at the technology today, computers and all this, there's multiple different ways that you could make money. I just chose to do Forex, even though there's a lot of other stuff that I've tried as well. I even tried drop shipping at one point. But Forex really stood out for me as well. Yeah, it was just, that freedom to just do anything you want with your own schedule, and to just trade from anywhere, especially.
It's funny. I had another interviewer on here probably just before you, who did the same thing, went to drop shipping, and then ended up in Forex. So, what about so you go, okay, I'm gonna learn to trade Forex. Can you think back to 5 years ago and how it all started? I mean, what were your first steps into this industry?
My first steps. Okay, so the very first thing I did actually to gain, or understand or have a better understanding of what Forex was, I would actually I would go on YouTube and I would search up what is Forex and just learn the basics from that. Understanding the major currencies, what it actually is. It's some basic facts. And then I also noticed there was a app which I really, really liked, especially, and sometimes even now when I have beginners messaging me and asking me where to get started, I always recommend this app, because I personally felt like it really helped me, get a better understanding, not only of the basics, but a lot of the other side of it as well, where where, for example, if somebody was to come up to you and ask you what is Forex, you'd be able to explain to them thoroughly and accurately as to what it is. And that app is actually called Go Forex, and I think they have very, very good information on there for free as well. They even have a simulation where you can actually go and start trading.
Cool, that's a great recommendation. I've got a funny feeling I've heard about that before, but maybe before it was an app. It may have even been a guy from New Zealand. I'm just thinking here. I might be wrong. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's where you sort of got your foundation, and you would have obviously dived into the charts. Did you go demo trading first? Did you go straight into the live account? How did that look?
Oh man. I'd actually started off live. I started off small, $100, $200. And I blew all, obviously, when you start off as a trading, you don't even know what you're doing. You're just kind of gambling in the beginning. Obviously, I blew my accounts. But then I started to understand what the demo accounts was. And obviously, I started to pick up demo accounts and started to go more into technical analysis. Actually, before I even focused on technical analysis, I would be focusing more on the fundamentals, looking at unemployment rates and, just non-farm payrolls and interest rates decisions and the economy of a country. But that was too major, too broad. I need to look for something more precise. So I kind of stumbled upon technical analysis from a lot of the traders on Instagram. And from then I just kind of, looked at their analysis and tried copying it and trying to understand how they, marked it the way that they did. And then, they would kind of say terms like, resistance. And I would, get curious and just search up what resistance was in Forex. And eventually just kind of, compound interest, your knowledge just stacks up onto each other until, it got to a point where I was just trading demo and I was using technical analysis. Sometimes I'd win, sometimes I would lose. Keep in mind, though, I had no knowledge of the psychological aspect and the actual risk management of trading. This was just pure methodology and pure just, the strategy aspect of trading. So demo I did like around for a few months, I would say maybe 5 to 6 months. And then from there, I thought, I was prepared for the live account now because I had a good strategy. Little did I know, the greed starts kicking in, the fear starts kicking in. Risk management was not even in place. I didn't even know what risk management was. And from that point on, you learn from your losses, you learn from, your mistakes. And I kind of, mastered my psychology using different methods such as reading books. I even took up even meditation, which really helped me as well. And for risk management, it's very, very similar. You just have to understand like the casino mindset, So yeah, that's pretty much how I started off.
And so
it was a long journey. It's kind of hard to explain.
Well, I mean, it's good because you've given us, 5 to 6 months in demos is a lot longer than a lot of people do out there. So I mean, that obviously gave you the strategy. I mean, you went to live. The greed kicked in. What can you give us an example of what exactly you might have been doing wrong that you weren't doing in the demo account?
Oh man, I was entering too many positions on the live account because on the demo account. When you're trading demo, like, when you're losing, you don't really think of it. You're like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, it's just red. I'll just close my position. I'll just refund it, But on a live account, it's not like that. You're trading with money that you actually worked hard for. And you really want, this $500 or $1,000 to actually turn into something profitable that you can actually, make something tangible. And, I'd see like $50 profit and I'd be like, okay, I'm definitely going to close this trade. When instead I could have just held on to that trade and it could have, even did $100 or even, $150. And even when I was losing trades, I would, get very, very scared, especially like when I saw the red. And for that reason, like I'd be too eager to just close out my position and like, let the trade play out and then try again, even though that's like being patient is important, but, taking action is sometimes, it's more important as well. You're just going to let the trade just go by. And from that, like, you just have to overcome that as well with fear. What I actually, something that helped me overcome these problems was actually looking at the setup itself rather than my MetaTrader. If you notice, like on MetaTrader, when you're in negative, you see the screen turn red, and psychologically speaking, when you see a red, it just means danger. It means warning. So for that reason, I just completely stopped looking at my MetaTrader. I'd focus on my setup. Occasionally, I'd pull up, to see how like my trade was doing and whatnot, how the swap fees and etc. But other than that, focusing more on TradingView and the actual trade itself, rather than the position that I was holding, really helped my psychology in that aspect.
That's a nice tip. I like that. And so did you find there was like a tipping point or a turning point where things just started to flip over?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Did you find there was like a tipping point or a turning point where things just started to like, really click for you and you go, I've now got this?
Yeah, I think that was it. Like when I'd focus more on the setup rather than the MetaTrader itself, because then I was more focused on my analysis rather than looking at it profit-wise. I was looking more at the pips rather than the profit, And that in itself just took out all the greed that I had because I'm not looking at the money anymore, right? I'm looking at the setup. And the fear, there was no more fear as well. Sometimes you would, as beginners, you'd have fear of entering trades or, that fear of just feeling that you're going to be wrong. I actually never had that. I never had to go through that because I understood from the beginning that no one is going to win 100% of the time, so even somebody who says 90% of the time when they win 90% of the time, like I personally think that's very unlikely. So through that aspect and through that perspective, I was okay with losses. But as soon as I had like a string of losses, obviously I'd be upset. I'd get angry with myself. Obviously, again, something that I had to overcome. And fortunately, it didn't really take me that long because I started looking into, again, I would look at other successful traders as well, and I would try to take their advice, not only listen to it, but I'd actually take their advice, write it down, and understand what they were trying to tell me. and I try to implement it in my own trading, whether it be something as simple as closing your positions, or like holding your positions instead of closing it too early, or walking away from the chart when you enter a trade. Something very, very simple and something very easy to do. A lot of traders lack in that because they think, oh, I'm better than that. But fortunately enough, I was able to overcome that by actually looking at other successful traders and understanding where they're coming from.
And the strategy you're using when it finally clicked for you, and even now, is it the same as the one you were running on demo?
No. The one that I was running back then was the simple, following the trend with support, resistance, and like moving averages just to help me identify the trend. But that was pretty much it. Like I wasn't even using candlestick patterns at that time. But like the thing is, when you backtest it, it actually works, and it worked for me like around 60 or maybe even 50% of the time, which at the time I was satisfied with because I wasn't getting it wrong all the time now. Because when I was just starting, I'd get it wrong like almost always, and sometimes there'd be a winning trade, but because of pure luck rather than actually analyzing and seeing what I did right. But obviously, the market evolves, and your methodology has to evolve with it. So right now, obviously, there's other stuff I look for, which now that I think back, actually, like that was a very simple strategy that I used to follow. But the way that the market is right now, I feel like you won't be able to follow that same methodology anymore.
Okay, that's interesting. And so when you evolved into this, more advanced strategy, how did you add things into it so that you didn't destroy what you'd already had in the past?
Well, so for example, in the beginning, I would look at like trend trading, but then I would break that up. I'd be like, what is a trend and what time frames do I have to identify this trend? Like before, I'd be looking at the lower time frames, but then as I progressed my learning and my understanding of how the Forex market was, I would look at other time frames as well, which I wasn't really used to at the time. And then from that, I would look at market structure. This was a new term that was very, and that took me a while to actually fully grasp as well. But once I mastered that, like I had that down, and then I would understand how the support resistance and how to actually like the psychology behind it. Like for example, if there's a support at the bottom, it's not just like, oh, because price is struggling to break through, but rather it has everything to do with psychology. Like the bears are failing to push through support, and the bulls are starting to outweigh the bears at that specific point in time where the price is at support. But once you see a specific type of candlestick, you would recognize, okay, maybe we're having a breakout now. And then once we have that breakout, I would actually wait for the retest rather than just entering off of that breakout. So a bit more patience as time progressed. And, that was a really big turning point for me as well.
How would you define your trading style at the moment?
I'm more of like an intraday day trader type. I like to hold positions for maybe, a day, a few hours, and maybe even like 2 or 3 days, but nothing more than that. I definitely do not like to hold positions over the weekend. However, I know how to trade. Like for someone who wants to do swing trading, I understand what you have to look for in order to, have a good setup for that specific type of trading style.
And what time frames do you analyze now?
The daily and 4 hour mostly. I don't even drop down to the 1 hour and the 2 hour. I just strictly focus on the daily and the 4 hour. And beginning of the week, I like to look at the weekly time frame as well. But other than that, at the end of the month, I look at the monthly time frame just to see how the candle closed. But other than that, it's just daily and 4 hour.
And how many trades do you reckon you take a week?
Ooh, that varies. I would say maybe around 3 to 7 trades per week. It depends on how the market is at the time. I don't really I'm not one of those traders that force trades. Rather, I like to look at different setups. I like to identify the best quality setup, and then I execute on that one setup. Usually what other traders do is that they would find multiple setups and they'd enter all of them. I'm more of like a conservative, so I'd look for the best type of setup. I'd execute on that.
And what's your winning percentage and risk to reward ratio? How does that look?
Okay, so minimum risk reward ratio, I would do 1 to 2. Like I barely even do 1 to 2, but minimum I would do 1 to 2. The winning percentages, I would say maybe around 60 to 70% now. Before it was much lower. I was still profitable, of course, but obviously the higher win percentage you have, and with the proper risk management, you can have a winning percentage below 50%, but still end the month profitable. But recently, like it's been pushing up higher and higher because of this new strategy that I've just been looking at.
And how many instruments do you check when you're analyzing the markets?
When you say instruments, do you mean like technical, like tools?
No, sorry. I mean symbols, currency pairs, indices, commodities. Is there a better way to say it? I don't know. Is there a better way to say it than instruments? Like I was actually struggling with this term the other day. I was like, is there a better way to describe? Is it markets? Yeah, with the number of markets that you trade. Maybe it's markets.
Yeah. Maybe I think markets is probably a better term to use.
Maybe
but
change it to markets.
Yeah, no worries, man.
So,
but to answer that question,
yeah.
Sorry, you were
I was just going to say, yeah, go on, mate. How many do you trade, and which ones are they?
Okay, yeah. So usually I just trade. Well, not usually. I only trade Forex and the major currency. What I like to look for as well, but sometimes I like to mix it as well. So, for example, the major currencies. There's a USD CAD, GBP USD, USD CHF. But then I also like to trade GBP JPY. GBP odd. Euro CHF at times, Euro CAD as well, CAD JPY. But other than that, I don't really trade any indices or commodities. I used to trade gold a lot, but the way that it's looking right now, like I personally I feel like I can find better opportunities in the Forex market rather than the commodities, just because of the craziness that's happening with the whole virus, and it's just really just shooting up. Personally, I don't really see any quality setups for gold. So for that reason, like at the time, I'm just focusing on Forex.
Yeah, especially with the weirdness that went on with oil just recently as well. I mean, that's, how do you trade that?
Yeah, that was crazy. That was fundamentally driven for sure.
Yeah.
With the whole OPEC and Saudi Arabia and Russia. Crazy.
Now, how many trades do you typically have running at one time?
Maximum 3. Maximum 3. Now, this is... like sometimes I do like to scale in, but with that, putting that aside, I would say like 3 different positions.
And do you have like a trading plan? Actually, I had heard this the other day, and it was a great trading plan I heard. So do you have you said maximum 3. Do you have like a trading plan that you've got all these rules and stuff that you'll have to adhere to?
Yeah, of course. I mean, every trader does have a trading plan, especially, if they've been trading for so long, you must have a trading plan. Like, for example, one of my trading plan is I don't trade on Sundays. That's the one thing that really helped my winning percentage, increase, is I would just simply stop trading Sundays and Fridays as well when the market is about to close. And also, I would look at fundamentals as well. So if I see there's a major news event, for example, on Friday, the first Friday of every month, there's non-farm payroll, I would make sure to not be in any USD trades, any USD pairs at that time when that news release occurs. There's just small things like that could really help. And like another thing that on my trading plan, obviously, I don't want to reveal the whole thing, is like my minimum risk reward ratio is 1 to 2. And I'm risking 2% on every single trade. Some people, they like to risk 3%. Some people even like to go up to 5%. Personally, I feel comfortable with 2% per trade. So for example, if I have a risk reward ratio of 1 to 4, I'd be making 8% if that trade were to hit take profit. And I'd only lose 2% if it hit stop loss.
Right. Cool. That's really useful. So what does your typical trading day look like?
What does my typical trading day look like? What do you mean?
Well, if you're going to be, I assume you're sort of trading. I mean, maybe every day you're looking at the charts at some point. When do you look at the charts? And how does that sort of factor into your, typical day?
Okay, I see what you mean. So there's different sessions that I like to really trade, especially the London and the New York session. So what I personally like to the timings I like to enter trades is after the Asian session. So this is after the daily close on my time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern time. After the daily close, then I'd wait for the 4-hour closure, and then if there's a trade or a setup that presents itself, I would be entering then. However, I don't really trade after like lunchtime, which is usually around 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. like Eastern time. And but the best time for me is pre-New York session and post like London session. So I'm like post-prime London session. So obviously my time, New York session is like around like 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. I like to be up and looking at the charts around 5 a.m. and looking for setups then, because 5 a.m. is one of the 4-hour closures. So at that time if I can find a good position at that time, that's like the perfect time for me.
And so, yeah, I suppose if you don't go lower than 4 hours, so it's only every 4 hours you've got to really do something. What do you do with the rest of the time?
Oh man, I just do whatever. Like once I enter my trade, I either go on Instagram, like post stories there, help, answer DMs. Sometimes I just, go play basketball, go out for a jog. There's multiple reading books even. It just depends how I'm feeling that day. But usually the 4-hour closures is when I'm on the charts. Like for example, 9 a.m., 5 a.m., 1 p.m. Like those timings, I'm on the charts and I'm ready to look for positions.
So in the beginning, what do you think made you different from other mum and dad traders out there? I mean, what special traits did you have or actions did you take?
Well, I was a very, very curious and a hard worker. I think for example, the markets open on the weekdays, right? On the weekends is where the studying would really happen for me. Like most traders, they'd front test, they'd back test on the weekdays when the market's actually open. But when the weekend comes, they're no longer interested in trading until the market opens up again. But me at that time, I was so eager to learn. Like I'd be, looking at YouTube videos. I'd be looking at past trades, past mistakes that I did. And keep in mind, this is when I was a beginner. So this wasn't even like a few years in trading. Like this was like when I was just starting out. I was looking at on the weekend. I was writing down stuff. I was looking at what I could do better. What stuff helps me as a trader, like increase my win rate. For example, instead of looking at support resistance on the 1 hour, I'd be looking at the 2 hour or the 4 hour. Keep in mind, this is like in the very, very beginning, right? And I think that's pretty much it. Like every single time I'd hear a different, like a new term, like Elliott waves, for example, or like supply demand, I'd be the first to just write that down, and then later on look at YouTube, look at different traders on social media platforms and just try to understand what it is, and try to get a better understanding of how I could personally implement it in my own trading. Sometimes it wouldn't even really be as useful because I have a very specific trading style, but still it's very good to learn new things. For who knows, you might be able to use it in the future.
Yeah, it's quite common amongst the guys that have been on the show is that they're very curious and they'll go off and study things, work hard after finding out some information. Whereas a lot of other people, and the large majority, I think, just like being spoon-fed stuff and will happily consume it, but then won't go and actively try and understand it themselves and spend time learning it. What do you think a retail trader working a day job, what do you think they should do other than, jump on the Go Forex app and sort of study that and jump on YouTube? And what things do you think they should do in terms of taking steps to become a profitable trader?
Okay, so if there's a retail trader or like an individual that's working 9 to 5, you have to be organized in the way that you actually go about working. So for example, if you start work at 9 and you end at 5 o'clock, what are you doing after 5 o'clock? Say it takes an hour to get home, for example. What are you doing after that? You might have spend some family time, etc. But there should be a time in your, like every single day, there should be a time where you just dedicate it straight to Forex and learning, what you should be learning. For example, like what support resistance is and etc. And the weekend especially, this is the best time for you to really learn new things, because then you have the previous the week's data you can look at, And if you have the replay tool, you can really start back testing on some of those trades. So I would just recommend organize your time and try to make at least, if not an hour, like 45 to 30 minutes to just focus on Forex and use that time wisely and understand, just jot down things that you want to learn, what you already kind of have an understanding of, what you want to fully understand, like things like that, things of that nature. And, every single day, just try your best to learn something new about trading, especially if for those who are trying to overcome the rat race, you have to learn. Like you can't make an excuse that you're tired. You have to make time. This has to be a priority for you.
So thinking about a price chart, I mean, what 3 things would you recommend a novice or intermediate trader educate themselves on?
Candlestick patterns for sure. Like not only candlestick patterns, but the psychology of the candlesticks. And I would also recommend looking at the overall trend of the market, understanding which way the market is trending. And it's not as simple as, since the price is pushing up, it has to be in an uptrend. It's not as simple as that. It can be a bit more complex than that. And so understanding the trend, the psychology of the candlesticks, and understanding which sessions work best for you. Because, for example, like the Asian session, generally speaking, is known to be a very slow session, whereas the New York session or the London session is generally known to make a big move. So you want to find that one session that's good for you and write it in your trading plan and try to use that session to your own benefit. So just to quickly recap, psychology of candlesticks, price action, the trend itself, and what session works best for you.
And on the first two, I mean, where would you get somebody to start on for example, the psychology of candlesticks? What's a good resource for that and the trends actually as well?
Okay, so candlestick psychology. So if you understand candlestick patterns, you have to understand why these candlestick patterns are the way that it is. For example, the bullish pin bar. You have to understand why the bullish pin bar it has a bullish, bias rather than a bearish one. And something that you could potentially use is maybe babypips.com. Honestly, I haven't really looked at different references because mostly it's just experience that the more you trade, the more you'll understand how price behaves. So for example, if there's a huge wick towards the upside, you have to understand what that means. For example, there could be an evening star formation in a downtrend. And generally speaking, on candlestick pattern cheat sheets, an evening star formation obviously means that it's going to push down, but rather you'd see it push up. Because it's not in the correct environment that specific candlestick pattern formed in, you have to be aware of which type of setting that it's actually that you want to actually trade in. The second thing, the trend. You have to look at different time frames, market structure especially. There is a very good book I would recommend. This is actually for the first one as well, understanding the psychology. It's called the Candlestick Bible, I believe it's called. And it's a very, very useful book. I'm not sure the price. I think it's around maybe $10, or even if it's worth $50, I would say, it's a very good investment. I would highly recommend you guys buy that. Because trust me, it's a very, very in-depth book. It talks about what each candlestick pattern and what it entails and why it's a pattern, and then on top of that, it talks about market structure as well. And market structure is obviously paramount to understanding the overall trend of the market.
Nice, cool. Well, look, let's jump into the quickfire round. So we've got a few questions here that are going to summarize some of what you've said and find out a little bit more as well. So how long did it take you to go from newbie to consistently profitable?
So the first 2 years was treacherous for me. I was blowing so many accounts. But after 2 years, I actually understood the psychology. I mastered psychology. I had a good, solid strategy methodology that I was using, and the risk management I was using as well. So I would say after 2 years is when I was consistently profitable.
What's your favorite entry setup?
A tweezer top right at the level of resistance.
And what's the tweezer? Tweezer, just so I've heard that term before, but I can't picture it in my head.
A tweezer, okay, so it's basically a candlestick Bible. A it's a candlestick pattern where the wick at the top and the wick at, so there's two candlesticks, right? So the first candlestick and the second candlestick, they have an equal wick at the top, and the first candlestick happens to be bullish and the second one happens to be bearish. So that basically shows that the bears are ultimately overcoming the bulls, that specific candlestick, and the bears usually, there happens to be a big move after that specific pattern occurs, especially at a strong level of resistance. I could even show you an example once we hop onto the charts.
Cool. What strategies do you use to exit or manage active trades?
Okay, so usually I like to do 2% risk on each trade. So this is generally speaking. And once my trade is in profit plus 2%, I usually make my trade break even. When it's 4%, then I like to secure 1% profit, and then I just let it ride out. And occasionally, like when it's like up around 80%, I like to close like maybe 80% of my trade position, and just let the rest like continue go towards take profit.
What's your recommended trading book? I think it's going to be Candlestick Patterns, or maybe another resource that we could go and check out after the show.
Babypips.com. There's also I would highly recommend reading some psychology-based books as well, because this could potentially help the viewer or the listener understand what they're lacking in and how they can actually improve on. Now, one of the books, psychology books I would recommend is Untangling the Mind. Now, the author, I can't really remember the author's name, but I remember reading that book, and it was a very, very in-depth study of the brain and how it functions. And obviously, you can definitely use that in trading as well.
Perfect. And what's your preferred broker and trading platform?
I use MetaTrader 4 as my platform, and I use TradingView.com as to actually look for to analyze trades. And my preferred broker right now, I use OctaFX, just because they have a Bitcoin deposit and withdrawal, which happens to be a very quick process rather than having to do wire transfer or Visa debit. Personally speaking, especially as a Canadian resident, there's a lot of brokers that don't really deal with us. And OctaFX is also regulated, and they have a low spread. So for that reason, currently I'm using OctaFX. If I happen to come by a better broker, then I would definitely go with that broker.
I've not heard them before, but that's interesting, and a nice way to get around the regulations if you're stuck, as we are here in New Zealand, quite somewhat. Look, last question. Oh, sorry, second to last question. Oh no, last question of this round is if you could walk us through your worst ever trade.
Oh man, my worst ever trade. So I had a 10K account. This was like back, I would say maybe my 1.5 years. So I wasn't really consistently profitable, but I felt like I understood it. I was very firm in my understanding of the Forex market. So I went big, At the time, $10,000 was a lot of money for me, and I put in $10,000. Second weekend or third weekend, I was taking trades that was not according to my trading plan and my risk management plan. So I was basically just gambling. So I remember this exactly. It was Euro JPY. I was entering a short position, and the reason why I was entering a short position was simply because it was a shooting star or an evening star formation off of a level of resistance, I believe. Now, we actually went down, and I was up like around $2,000 or $3,000. I felt like it could continue pushing down, and this was like, by the way, I was risking maybe like 80% of my account. I was going all in on this trade.
Jeez.
And yeah, it just kept pushing down, and I was seeing some nice profit. And at the time I was in college, so I closed my laptop. I paid attention to the lecture. I opened it up, and I saw like a 7.5 thousand loss, and I was just devastated because that was a lot of money for me at the time.
Oh dear, I feel your pain.
Yeah, man. Like I was scaling in and everything, man. It was a very terrible time.
Before we wrap up, what's the best way for the guys to get hold of you?
Instagram, Forexed. There's also my I'll just say Instagram.
Yeah, check him out on Instagram. So look, a big thank you to Ali for sharing with us today. Everything we discussed here, along with all the links, are in the show notes. To find them, simply search for Ali in the search box on tradingnut.com. Until next time, I wish all my listeners trading happiness and success. So there we have it, folks. Interview done and dusted with Ali. Now, do remember to head over to the YouTube channel to find out how he breaks down a price chart. And then we get a real treat in the coming weeks where I'm going to release a video where he actually goes through and places a trade. His entire thought process is revealed, and it's a bit like the Trading View Replay Challenge, which is a new thing I do. So guys, plenty to check out here on Trading Nut. Do also remember to check out the new sponsor. Yes, check out the new sponsor as well. And Robot Builders Club, this is the month to join, guys. If you're thinking about it, if you've been on the cusp, this is the month to join. You're going to get the Nick Sean robot, which is over there. Find out more on the Robot Builders Club page, and you're going to get $500 discount as well. So, folks, check all that out on tradingnut.com. See you next time.